Hi, listeners. How God Works will be back with all new episodes this fall. In the meantime, we're bringing you some conversations from my travels and featuring episodes from some of my favorite podcasts that tackle the questions you'd expect from our show. Today, I'm happy to bring you an episode from my friend Kelly Corrigan's show, Kelly Corrigan Wonders, where she talks with Rainn Wilson about his call for a new spiritual revolution in this country. You see, Rainn isn't only an actor who you might remember from the comedy series The Office. He's also a deep thinker about religion, and his most recent book, titled Soul Boom, is all about finding the wisdom in the world's traditions to help us repair our society. And, well, finding some time to laugh too. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Wrestling with the ego is what it's all about.
Welcome to Kelly Corrigan Wonders. I'm Kelly Corrigan, and today I'm wondering about how we reel in our big, fat, dumb egos so that we might refocus our considerable capacities on the bigger picture. What can we do to feel better and do better and be better in a modern world and a modern economy that is programmed to make us think endlessly about ourselves, our needs, and our wants? Today's guest is the deeply thoughtful, curious, very funny guy I now consider a friend, Rainn Wilson. You know him. He was Dwight Schrute on The Office. He was also my favorite, Arthur, in 6 Feet Under. He's the co-founder of something called Soul Pancake, which is a digital media company encouraging open-hearted dialogue. He is endlessly interested in what it means to be human and has been stewing on a set of ideas for a society that is aching for healing. He recently put them all together in a new book called Soul Boom: Why We Need a Spiritual Revolution. We met up at the Aspen Ideas Festival this summer before the actors' strike. So I want to put 3 quotes in front of you from your book.
Uh-oh.
The first is, if you are so angry, so depressed, so sore that your spirit cannot find deliverance and peace, even in prayer, then quickly go and give some pleasure to someone lowly or sorrowful.
Yeah.
Back it up.
Back it up with deeds, with knowledge, with
Yeah,
what?
I mean, give me the origins of that insight.
So, one of the sections of the book, I talk about joy, and there's a great deal of study of happiness. There's countless books about happiness. You know, psychologists use well-being, and some people talk about joy. And from my faith tradition, the Baha'i faith, this is a quote from Abdul Baha about joy, and I just love it because it's a spiritual inspiration that's saying, if you're feeling down, go give joy to someone else and it will uplift your spirit. On one level, that's what it says, and that's backed up by positive psychology, right? If we go do service to someone else, it actually makes us feel better. But really what it's talking about is joy as a service to others. So I think about this a lot in my own personal life, in the fact that I'm not a particularly joyful person. I might present joy sometimes, but my natural state is ruminative. Is that a word?
Sure.
But I think about this quote, and I really do honestly think about this quote, because I don't have to feel joy inside to give joy to someone else,
Right.
to uplift someone else's spirit, to cheer them up, to make them laugh. And that is one of the greatest services that we can do to another person. So there's a lot of talk in spiritual traditions about, being of service, but giving joy to someone. And then win-win, it also makes you feel a little better and elevates your own spirit.
Yeah, I think fake it to make it is one of the truest things that we know about human nature, that you could do yourself into some kind of emotional state.
Yep.
And the core of the quote for me was, there's self-focus and there's other focus. And you can just flip it. And I do it all the time. I do it at least once a day, where I'm feeling cranky about something or frustrated that I can't move a number or get a call back from somebody important, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think, I'm going to call somebody who actually needs me. I'm going to call my mom. And I'm going to let her tell me about her bridge game and going to church and seeing her sweet Ava, this woman at church who she loves. And, I'm just going to spend 5 minutes with her. And I think for me, the microness of that action has kind of been an unlock, because sometimes when people say service, people think about like serving food at
Soup
a
kitchens,
food bank.
yeah.
Where you have to really get organized in advance and have yourself fingerprinted. And there's all these barriers. But the kind of joy giving that you're talking about is much smaller level. It's much more incremental. Like I do it all the time in New York when I'm feeling kind of bitchy. And I see the guy out there watering like the little plants. I say, looking good. And all of a sudden, it's like a little different. Like the world's slightly different color.
100%. There's so much I want to say on this, but I know you have lots of questions to ask me.
Say all you want.
Okay, so my father, who passed away, and I have a feeling you're going to get to that in your listeners, there's a big sheaf of pages of questions here that Kelly's got in front of her. Because in my book, Soul Boom, I talk about the death of my father and the perspective that gave me. But my father was a troubled person in a lot of ways, and we struggled in our relationship in a lot of ways, like children do with their parents. But here's one thing that he was incredibly good at, and that I can still humbly learn to follow his example one day at a time. And that is, every room he went into, he made a better place. So he always uplifted people. He was always like, hey, Kelly, that's a nice blue shirt. It goes with your eyes. Good morning. How are you? This is a beautiful place. He always had something positive to say and uplifting. I never saw him go be sulky and glum. On his own, he was plenty sulky and glum. And he would sometimes need to kind of retreat into a ruminative state. Not remunerative, because that's a different word.
Stop showing off your crazy vocabulary, mister.
Thank you. Boom. Aspen. But so I think of that when I think of spreading joy.
Yeah. It's so simple. It's so small. So you and I have a lot in common on this, and you don't know it yet. But I had that kind of dad too. Like he made people feel special because he actually thought people were special. I mean, it wasn't really a very superficial act. It wasn't this funny habit that he adopted externally. It just kind of flowed naturally from his core, that he just thought everybody was so neat. And he just assumed that you had something fantastic about you. And also, I was in the room with my dad when he died, and I know you were too.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
Many thoughts on that. Yeah. After my father died in the hospital room, we actually he was on his way out. There was not a chance of survival after a quadruple bypass surgery, and he didn't make it. He had too much blockage, and it was very complicated anyways. His blood pressure was lowering and lowering and lowering. He was going to be dead within the hour. So we okayed the unplugging of him. And first of all, it was such a hospital cliche. It was like one of those Grey's Anatomy ER TV show things with doctors and hushed voices and squeaky shoes on the linoleum and the beep, beep, beep of machines and, the respirator going like that. So I just kept thinking wow, this is such a cliche. The storyteller in me. And the other cliche, which is also one of the most profound revelations that I've ever had in my life, was after he was dead, I just was profoundly punched in my heart of, this is not my father. This body that is lying in front of me. And it was just this realization oh, this isn't my father. This is the vessel that carried my father. That guy that you were describing and I was describing, that went into a room and always told a joke and gave a compliment and had something nice to say. And the spirit of that person had moved on. this was a vessel that carried him for 79 years. His little eyebrow hairs poking up, his mole on his forearm, little hair sticking out of his nose. And it was just so clear. It was just so clear. It wasn't an intellectual realization. It was just a gut realization. And at the same time, it was not a kind of an idea at all of like, oh, he's been snuffed out like the flame of a candle. That spirit, light, consciousness has just moved on.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, I felt over time. I mean, at first I just missed him so much. He was such an important person in my life, and he was such a joy to talk to. So I just missed talking to him. But over time I thought, oh, it's just right there. Like you can just have him anytime. You can just be him. Just be him. You just bring him right into the room anytime you want. And I'm so conscious at all times of like what he would say. Like I can always conjure him. He's not even an inch away from me. So that part, that's the amount you get to keep, was a wonderful surprise for me. That was like, it's fine. He's totally alive.
Do you talk to your dad?
No. I mean, occasionally we used to call him Greenie. And occasionally I'll say like, Green Man, are you looking at this? Like, is this amazing? But no, I don't talk to him. I live in New York now. He taught me New York. He showed me New York.
Yeah, angels don't talk to people in New York.
But I walk around and I say, hey, Green Man, there's St. Patrick's. Hey, Green Man, there's the Hearst building where you used to work. Hey, Green Man, that restaurant's still there that we went to. Like, it's alive with him. And I think I didn't realize why I was moving there. But then when I got there, I was like, oh, here we are. Here you are. Like, I can find you here all the time. I couldn't find him in California.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Where did your dad die?
He died in the little town of Wenatchee, Washington,
where
he had lived for the last 18 years of his life.
Yeah. So let me give you another quote that might not need any explanation, which is, it's all just static.
Yeah. So similar to this, I had a friend named David Von Anken. He was a very close friend of mine. He was mostly a television director, really interesting dude, 6'7", ginger-haired Jew who'd traveled the world and used to take sailboats from like Nantucket down to the Bahamas, A
life eater.
Yeah, and fascinating guy, filled with big ideas. And out of the blue, he was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. I mean, just out of the blue, just had like a side ache when he was swimming once. And he was 50 years old, top health, run marathons. And so I was very close with him through his decline and through his struggles. He was going through a very difficult divorce at the time. And correlation, I don't know. But we used to walk every week on the beach, and he was not one for large metaphysical questions. I am one for large metaphysical questions. So I would try and bring it back to death and the life after death and the soul and the human consciousness and physical plane and some thoughts along those lines. I would do it in a very gentle way, usually at the end of a conversation, and just tease it a little bit. He didn't really want to go there, but one day he said to me, it's all just static. He said, Rainn, this death sentence that I have has made me realize it's all just static. The emails, the phone calls, the texts, the meetings, the appointments, the dry cleaning, like all of that is static. And you've got to put the static aside and just focus on what's important. And I thought that was such a clear metaphor, because sometimes it does just feel like the buzz and hum and rattle of static that gets in the way of being really alive.
Mm-hmm. You got to hear the signal through the noise. The third quote I was going to give you, we don't even need to discuss, which is, you must drink in our mortality. It's the ultimate framing device. And you brought up Bhutan, which has very high gross national happiness and a habit of thinking about death 3 times a day, which, correlation, But the thing I wanted to talk about next was that you brought up how weird it is that one of the most popular board games of all times is the Game of Life, followed maybe by Monopoly, and what that says about a culture and what it might do to young minds who are framing what's important in life to be playing those games all the time.
Yeah. I have a chapter called Death and How to Live It, because I do think that death is the ultimate framing device. And if you want to begin tiptoeing down a journey to think about spiritual themes, death is a great place to start. So I brought up the Game of Life because I was remembering my childhood and what a ridiculous and preposterous game this is. It's in the Smithsonian. It's sold hundreds of millions of copies. And essentially, for those who haven't played it or don't remember when it was really big in the 70s and 80s, you start a little peg on the board, and the entire game of life is accruing material things. So eventually you get your high school diploma, your college diploma, you get a car, you get married, you get stocks, you buy property, and literally the winner of the game of life is whoever dies with the most toys wins, which was a very popular bumper sticker in the 80s in Seattle when I grew up. And I thought about how ridiculous that is, that the winner of the game of life literally just has the most crap.
Yeah.
And I framed it as a conversation on spiritual virtues, because from my faith tradition and in my personal belief, I feel that the divine spark that is within all of us, that is manifested through spiritual virtues such as kindness, love, compassion, humility, honesty, joy, creativity. These are all qualities of the divine. Now, if you're not spiritual minded, you can just say they're positive character traits, right? So everyone likes positive character traits. Everyone likes.
You can keep it secular.
Yeah, keep it very secular. If you like, we like humble and honest people, right? Those aren't necessarily the qualities of the Buddha or qualities of Jesus. But what if in the game of life, it didn't really have to do with how many houses you had or how much money you had in the bank, but how many spiritual qualities you had accrued over the course of that game of life? Has life made you more wise, more kind, more compassionate, or has life stripped those out of your heart? Because from my perspective, just like referring back to my father, when his spirit passed on to whatever realm it's in, you can call it heaven or the happy hunting grounds or nirvana or whatever it is, he didn't take with him his Ford truck, right? Or his $1,307 he had in the bank. You know, he took with him his joy, his kindness, humility, his creativity, his positivity. And to me, that's what it's all about. So we should make a new game of life.
Totally. I think in my game of life, the winner would have the deepest connections, the most enlivening life experiences. You know, like losing a friend. I lost a friend too. And that experience is astonishing and deeply enriching and makes you and I more useful people to everyone we're in contact with. Like it just teaches you things that there's no other way you could learn them. And that makes us more useful. And being more useful to me is the name of the game.
The theologian and philosopher Martin Buber said, all real living is meeting. And I love that because it's not just meeting a person and making that connection, but it's meeting a tree or nature, or it's meeting the creator in contemplation. It's meeting oneself in contemplation. But that act of conjoining, which allows one to see that we're not separate, but that we are connected, that's where real living happens, is in those moments. And I think that's what we're talking about when we're talking about our fathers. And that's what sparked me, what you just said about the game of life, is the most real meetings that one accrues over the course of their life.
Yes, and the fullest meetings, where it's not at a superficial level that you're meeting, but at this like kind of body to body level, like 1,000 points meeting where every part of you is connecting. Like that's the reward for a life well lived. Like that's the feeling, the highest feeling that I know is feeling like deeply useful to someone that I'm crazy about.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay. I think I might be more secular than you are, but I'm curious, what's the highest feeling you know?
So I want to experience God in all things. And when I do, that's when I feel sublimity. So whether it's in meditation in my garden, I have this beautiful little bench in our back garden, and there's hummingbirds, it's chock-a-block with hummingbirds. And when I meditate there in the morning, when I'm camping or taking a hike in the wilderness, when I'm, making waffles with my wife and son in the morning, and my son is playing us all the new bands that he's discovered on Spotify, when I'm at a Radiohead concert, when I'm in an artistic experience where there is great beauty, especially I think about the theater, because that's kind of where I started my artistic journey. I think about like great moments of theater that are just so uplifting and sublime and transcendent. So that's when I feel connected to the divine essence. And I don't believe you need to go to a church to do that. I don't believe you need to be doing anything religious to be in that mode. It's seeking ecstasy and it's seeking transcendence. And that, again, comes through connection. It comes through this Martin Buber meeting. But to me, that's what it's all about. And are there absurd and wonderful ways that I can find that as well?
You're an addict. And I wonder if when you were using drugs and alcohol, if you were always looking for some transcendent moment.
Yeah, this is anyone who's interested in this, Carl Jung writes about it and just so beautifully. And he had an incredible impact on the 12-step program in his letter to Bill W. Addicts are seeking the divine, and they're seeking connection, and they're seeking sublimity and transcendence. They're just trying to take a shortcut, and it works great for a while until it stops working. And so for me, I'm really polyaddicted. Like I've been through phases of trying to use most everything for that kind of like shortcut toward meaning and connection. It was drugs and alcohol. It's been porn. It's been social media. It's been workaholism, codependence. You name it. And there's a physiological aspect to that as well. I mean, you can chart the, dopamine release systems and how that all works. And there's a trauma element. For me, my mom left when I was 1.5 years, and I stayed with my dad. And then we immediately moved to the jungles of Central America for 3 years. And he got remarried, and it was just crazy, crazy. And so that'll throw you off, I didn't have like a horrific childhood. I wasn't like grotesquely beaten or, there's people who have it a hell of a lot worse than me, but that did throw off my equilibrium. So yeah, that's been part of my search and part of my spiritual journey. And that's what the 12 steps encourage us to do. The 12 steps are a spiritual journey, like it or not. They just are. And they can and do. And I've seen it in dozens and dozens of cases, just make people's lives incredibly richer and more deep and more satisfying, filled with those moments of connection and transcendence that you're talking about.
Well, here's to Bill W.
Hear, hear.
And everyone who has carried that and carries it every day. I mean, it is kind of an incredible model for a type of religion, if you will.
It's a beautiful religion. It's the most successful of the modern religions on a number of levels, not just in numbers successful, but in doing what it seeks to do.
So you did something in the book that really won me over, which is that you really took the idea seriously and said, how would these coalesce around a brand new religion? which I think is such a great thought experiment. And there were 10 pieces of the religion that you culled from all great religions over time, which will be very familiar to people. And then you added 10 more plus a bonus. And some of the 10 really are worth talking about. The very first one you added was no clerics.
No clergy, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about the origin of this experiment to create Soul Boom, the religion. Because all my friends and secular Democratic left, big city Kelly Corrigan fans are kind of like, I can be spiritual, but not religious. So you hear this mantra, I could never be part of an organized religion.
It's the nuns, the N-O-N-E-S.
Yes, spiritual, but not religious, the largest growing religious population. And I completely get it. We as a culture are traumatized by religion. We're living in trauma over some of these evils perpetrated by organized religion in the name of God and over centuries and centuries.
Sure.
And so I completely get it. But the problem is that, as I say in the book, have we thrown the spiritual baby out with the religious bathwater? We throw out the religious bathwater. There might be some gems. There might be some positive.
There might be a baby in there.
There might be a baby of beauty and truth and meaning and solace for us, not just in, meditation and yoga class kind of spirituality, but in a deeper community seeking transcendence with a discipline type of spirituality. So to me, this was a thought experiment to kind of get young people who all say, I could never be part of an organized religion. I have this kind of knee-jerk push-away reaction, which again, I completely am empathetic toward. But okay, well, what would a perfect religion be? If you would create an organized religion, what would that look like? So I just was playing around with a bunch of ideas because I just wanted to start the conversation. So the idea that you could have a religion without clergy to me is really powerful and important.
I agree.
And truth be told, I'm a member of 2 religions that work that way.
Huh.
The Baha'i faith has no clergy, and the 12 steps have no clergy. So I see the power in a kind of democratic community, servant leaders, not anyone with a robe or a hat that has any power or authority over anyone else. And it's more challenging in a lot of ways. Sometimes in places and things, in organizations that work that way, it's kind of like the inmates running the asylum a little bit. Sometimes it can be very challenging.
There was another idea. Oh, there was one in here that really surprised me, which is put women at the center.
Yeah. There's a couple of books I reference in Soul Boom. One is Cassandra Speaks When Women Are the Storytellers by Elizabeth Lesser. And the other one is the seminal work called When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stone. And I also quote Ariana Grande, by the way, who sang, when all is said and done, you'll believe God is a woman.
Thanks,
there's
Ariana.
a lot of talking about the divine feminine and how the divine feminine has been shut out from the organized religious experience over the last 1,000 years or so. Early on in human history, when you go back to kind of quote unquote pagan religions, let's call them indigenous religions, the centrality of the feminine in the spiritual experience was legion. I mean, it was the seasons and fecundity and birth giving and warmth and love and godmother, Maya, earth, etc. And the patriarchal aspect of religion kind of became synonymous with militarism and conquest and kind of power and authority and a moralism that is really damaging and, again, has made legions of people rebel against organized religion. And this God becoming personified as this, I call him Sky Daddy, this idea of Sky Daddy looks scowling down on us. And I think that in our religious practice, we can learn a lot from kind of centralizing feminine qualities and the divine feminine and the power of the feminine and start to rethink these I'm no authority, but I know that that's really important.
Yeah. You also think nature is really important.
Yeah.
And you're not the first person that has talked to me about this. Margaret Atwood, of all people, is obsessed with people spending more time in nature. Johann Hari talks a lot about our lost connection to nature and what the costs of that are, what the consequences are. Talk about your experiences with nature and why you think it's so important.
Well, I mean, I could talk for half an hour on this. How do I distill it? When I was searching for God and what God meant, I was reading about the Lakota Sioux idea of the great spirit, Wakantanka, which literally translates to the great mystery. And from my feeble understanding of this faith tradition that is thousands of years old and incredibly wise and deep, this God, the great mystery, is really only understood through nature. So there's no personification. There's no like guy with a beard on a cloud kind of idea. It's in the wind and in the sunlight and in the change of the seasons. So this allowed me to understand the divine in a new way, to think about the great mystery understood through nature. And to me, I've sometimes, most all the time, feel most connected to the divine through nature. And I think societies that are most connected to the natural world are the most successful.
Yeah. I mean, I think about the smallness that nature offers you, and I'm always desiring to be smaller in the frame. And so either you're focused on others or you're focused on your environment. And to the extent that that shrinks you down, it's just a lighter walk through life.
And that is such a beautiful spiritual lesson, what you just talked about, because that's humility, which deflates the ego, which is the biggest battle in life and death and happiness. Abdu'l-Baha, the son of the founder of the Baha'i faith, he came to the United States about 100 years ago, and a journalist asked him, Abdu'l-Baha, do Baha'is believe in Satan? And Abdu'l-Baha said, yes. He said, oh, well, what do Baha'is think of Satan? And Abdu'l-Baha said, Satan is the insistent self.
Mm.
And that's so beautiful and perfect to me. There's not some red guy with horns and a pitchfork in a tail, like wanting to poke you for eternity in a limestone pit. It's Satan is the insistent self. I want status. I want glory. I want to be admired. I want stuff. I want people to think highly of me. I want total comfort. I want constant sexual satisfaction. I want distraction. Like, that's Satan. And when you make yourself small in the frame against the backdrop of the panoply and glory of nature, that's the best way to fight Satan.
So our conversation is part of a little mini-series that we're doing called After Much Study, Conversations with People Who Spend Most of Their Lives Learning. And so when I was reading Soul Boom, and I've read your other book, The Bassoon King, and I've listened to Metaphysical Milkshake, and I know where you're coming from. And I wondered, after all of that study, which you are a true student, I feel, of religions, spirituality, life itself, relationships, I had a set of questions that I wanted to ask you that I'm going to ask our other guests in this series as well. Are you ready?
Yep.
What's a situation you've been in recently where you felt totally attuned with your very best self, when you felt morally beautiful?
Doing a book tour for Soul Boom was very difficult. I had been in isolation throughout COVID and writing this book for 3 years. These are ideas that I'm passionate about, I feel very deeply about. It's basically a book. I call it my get hit by a bus book. If I went out and got hit by a bus, this book has everything that I've kind of thought about in case anyone gave it flying what Dwight from The Office thought about spirituality.
I like to think of you as Arthur from 6 Feet Under.
Oh, that's nice. So it's all there. So when I started to speak about the ideas, I was terrified. I was like a little child because it's one thing to put things down on paper. It's another thing to do a reading or a lecture, or be in front of an audience or be in conversation about those ideas. And I had no idea how people were going to respond. Were people going to be like, what a weirdo crackpot? What a new age hippie nonsense bozo? Like, I had no idea. And I really had no idea how receptive people were to the ideas in the book. This is a long-winded answer, but my answer is, after doing 4 or 5 readings, I will say that, for instance, I did a conversation with BJ Novak at 92nd Street Y on the stuff in the book. And being able to passionately and yet cerebrally articulate the ideas of the book to an audience that was crucially important to me in my gut and caused some resonance in the listening hearts was a miraculous event that happened several times on the book tour.
They met you. The audience met you.
It was a meeting. It was a connection.
What's something big you've been wrong about?
So many things. I would say my worst quality as a human being is being judgmental. So I often judge people and I'm profoundly wrong. And I learned that lesson over and over again. And yet I still can't really get over it.
What's a piece of feedback that you've received that really stung?
Oh, come on, Kelly. My wife talks to me about my tone. So we have a wonderful therapist named Bruce.
Hey, Bruce.
And he's next level. This dude is, I could do a whole podcast on Bruce. I should do podcasts where I just talk to Bruce.
Totally.
But Bruce talks about when communicating with a loved one about timing and sensitivity. And I'm like a bull in a china shop. It's like, if like you're bugging me with the thing, like, Kelly, stop it with the, don't do that thing. You know what I mean? So timing and sensitivity is something I need to work on in my marriage. And I will think that I have presented something with just great timing, taste, care, sensitivity. And my wife was like, you really have to watch your tone.
Yeah. Reapproach, please. Reapproach.
Yes. Like, can we have a do-over? Try that again. Mm-hmm. That doesn't feel good. What's your intent is one of the Bruce tools to say to someone. That's
good. I like that.
That doesn't feel good. What's your intent? You know, if someone's coming at you with something, then it immediately redirects.
Yeah.
So.
And it gives them a little wiggle room. Because it's like, maybe you're not an asshole. You just sounded like one. So really, tell me, what was your intent?
And you can do it at a coffee shop and you can do it with your partner. But now my son's in on it. So
how old is he?
He's 18. So he's like, Dada, you got to watch your tone. You know, can we?
They always take the side of the mother.
Can we try that again? Because your timing and your sensitivity was terrible.
He's going to be a great spouse someday. This is a really personal, hard question.
I like those.
If you had to perfectly align your spending with your values, what would change?
I wouldn't buy things from Amazon with one click. I would be a much more conscious consumer, and I'm not. I talk a good game about it, even in my book, you know, in my work in climate change, but I'm a big fat hypocrite, especially when it comes to just kind of like easy, abject consumerism. Just like, oh, I want that thing. Click, click. And this big truck belching diesel goes from the Amazon warehouse up my driveway. And the guy dumps it out in a big old cardboard box. And we get 20 cardboard boxes a week coming to our house.
I know.
And I would love to be a more conscious consumer.
This is obviously not a world where people get what they deserve. What helps you make sense of deep unfairness?
When I think about deep unfairness, I think about suffering and the nature of suffering, which I write about in my book, Soul Boom, Why We Need a Spiritual Revolution, from Hachette Publishers.
My first book is at Hachette.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think about suffering because I think this is something we've lost track of in the Western world. And there's kind of a collective spoiled stomping of the foot and going like, why is there suffering? It's not fair. It's a kind of childish, immature reaction to the idea of suffering. Suffering is, and by the way, we're talking about the death of my father and the death of my friend David. There is massive suffering out there. And David had a 9-year-old daughter at the time. You know, I mean, life is colossally unfair. But one of the things that the great spiritual traditions and wisdom traditions give us is an understanding of suffering and why there is suffering. And suffering goes hand in hand with unfairness, because I would say that unfairness is an aspect, it's a facet of suffering. Again, go back to the game of life, right? And the developing of these spiritual virtues. How many times in your life, Kelly Corrigan, Wonders? At first, when I heard your name, I thought it was Kelly Corrigan / Wonders. Like it was your married name or something. But how many horrific events in your past do you look back on with gratitude because of the wisdom that you gained? Mm-hmm. A lot, I'm going to say.
A lot.
I see some nods there. So,
well, listen, I had cancer in my 30s and did 2 years of treatment. And it was, by and large, like an experience I would not give up.
That's amazing. I wouldn't give up my struggles with addiction, with anxiety, and with depression, because I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. I wouldn't have written this book had I not suffered and struggled through that stuff. It shook me out of my very narrow view of the world and into a much kind of deeper, more resonant, more meaningful path that has brought me massive well-being and some wisdom, some small modicum of wisdom. So I'm grateful.
And it's made you a more useful human being. To go back to like my mission in life is that you're just more useful right now as you are, having lived through what you've lived through, than you were 25 years ago. You have more to give. You have more to say. You have more to offer. You have a specificity of support that you couldn't have conjured before.
Right. So, yes, if you had met 28-year-old Rainn, who was just kind of a selfish jerk trying to get more and more acting work and kind of just a insensitive goofball, and I was a nice young man, whatever, but I didn't have a whole lot to offer other than if you needed a character actor in a play somewhere.
Right.
That was the one use I had at that time.
Right. You're just trying to get yours. Like there's a period where everyone's just trying to get theirs.
Yeah. Just trying to get mine. Yeah, exactly. So why unfairness? So to look at colossal unfairness, one steps back and looks at the Buddha, with the Four Noble Truths. Life is suffering and the release from suffering. And you can substitute unfairness. Life is unfairness and the release from unfairness. Because when we detach with love from suffering and unfairness, and then we find incredible bliss in taking our next breath. So every spiritual tradition has a wealth of wisdom traditions that support this journey.
The kind of work that you and I do makes for opportunities. It makes for ego boosts and lots of followers and speaking fees and a nicer seat on the plane. I wonder how you feel fame and money and privilege and influence affect your life, for better or worse.
Yeah, this is a struggle. It's one of my biggest struggles. It's one that early on in the office I didn't do very well at. In my first kind of rise to fame, it was very odd to become famous at essentially age 40, after I'd been acting for 20 years. And, for a insecure, generally addicty, anxious guy who just wants to be loved, because most actors just want to be loved, right? That was a real mindfuck for me. And so, but this, again, we go back to the great spiritual traditions. Wrestling with the ego is what it's all about. The ego, the self, and what the self and ego want is so connected to the wirings of our brain, to our animal selves, towards satisfaction, comfort, status, power. This is humanity's great struggle. I've struggled with this on and off. I still struggle with it. I think I'm better at it. I certainly love the perks sometimes, but it's one day at a time. I try and remember that I'm a humble servant of God, and I'm trying to deliver my message and have uplifting, meaningful conversations with people meet them, connect with them, be of service to my wife and son and my family and my dear friends. And I am grateful for my privilege because it also allowed me to sell a book. And I wouldn't have sold Soul Boom if I was just some chump on a stump. It's, because I have some celebrity and I have social media followers, they were like, oh, we'll take a gamble on this guy writing a book on spiritual ideas.
My last question is that there's a lot to be discovered in us when we think about what we most want for our children. So some people say, I want my children to be happy above all. And some people say, above all, I want my children to be good people. Above all, what do you want your child to be?
I want my son to be a deep and wild thinker.
What a great answer.
I want him to find the truth for himself and to go on his journey and not settle for what society tells us. Society tells us so many untruths, kind of profound untruths.
Loudly and constantly.
Yeah, and I'm talking about stuff from the political left, and I'm talking stuff from the political right, and I'm talking about the idea that consumerism and the game of life will make us happy, and it all needs to be deeply queried on a heart and brain level. And I wish that for him. I hope that he doesn't get kind of just sucked into whatever tide, the static, but whatever the tide of opinion is, the way that it is shifting currently in society, that he's able to take a step back. So, and one thing I'll say about him, and I just appreciate about him so much, he is a deeply sensitive kid, and he's really kind, and he's very thoughtful about other people's emotions that he got from my wife, not from me. And I'm so grateful for that. So I want to put that and say that he's kind of, I feel like he's got that covered pretty well, but I really want him to think deeply and meaningfully and wildly and find some just outrageous and profound truth.
What's his name?
Walter.
Walter, may you hear the signal through the noise. Thanks, Rainn Wilson. You're a real joy to be with.
Thanks, Kelly. This has been a pleasure.
Before we get to the takeaways, I want to welcome you to reach out anytime with feedback or questions. Our email address is hello@kellycorrigan.com. Here are my takeaways from my conversation with Rainn Wilson. Number 1, if you are so angry, so depressed, that your spirit cannot find deliverance, even in prayer, then quickly go and give some pleasure to someone lowly or sorrowful. 2, you don't have to feel joy to give joy. 3, we must drink in our mortality. It's the ultimate framing device. 4, addicts are seeking the divine via the ultimate shortcut, which works until it doesn't. 5, beware the insistent self. 6, maybe the best comeback to interpersonal strife I've ever heard, because it makes plenty of room for a fast repair, is that does not feel good. What's your intent? 7, our animal ego selves will never stop grabbing for satisfaction, comfort, status, power. That's why we have to seek selfless states of being, meaning states less full of self. And number 8, all real living is meeting. I want to thank Rainn Wilson and the team at Aspen Ideas. That's Trisha Johnson, Kara Stein, Eleanor Loden, and Gabe Chenoweth. Thanks also to the team at Kelly Corrigan Wonders, technical producer Dean Kateri, executive producer Tammy Stedman, as well as Rachel Hicks and Charlie Upchurch, who help us stay connected. Finally, thanks to you all for listening and sharing episodes with friends and family around the country. Please join us again next time for Kelly Corrigan Wonders.